Great environment. It was nice to get a win, team win at that, where everybody contributed. So it was great. First win, first experience here.
And then for both of you to have Pablo.
The Indiana Fever's recurring issue of failing to close out competitive games once again reared its head in their recent clash against the Los Angeles Sparks, a game in which they sorely missed the calming presence and late-game poise of Caitlin Clark. As has become a frustrating pattern for the Fever, they started strong, taking early control and riding the momentum like a team ready to dominate, only to watch it all unravel in the closing moments, succumbing to a mix of defensive breakdowns, missed opportunities, and a lack of late-game execution that has plagued their season. The absence of Clark was felt especially in those critical final minutes. Her ability to manage the game tempo, stretch defenses, and make elite-level reads under pressure could have made all the difference. Nonetheless, the Fever didn't roll over. They fought, played with grit, and got strong individual performances. Natasha Howard stood out, quietly amassing 21 points on an ultra-efficient 8-4-11 shooting night. It wasn't a flashy performance, but one built on intelligence and discipline, taking what the defense offered rather than forcing the issue. She has emerged as one of the more consistent players for the Fever lately, appearing more and more like the impactful veteran presence they hoped she would be, especially when compared to other frontcourt options like Melissa Smith, who has not provided the same level of consistency. Alongside her, Aaliyah Boston put up a strong double-double with 23 points and 12 rebounds, though her 9-4-17 shooting reflected a slightly less efficient night than usual. Still, what stood out was Boston's aggression, something that has sometimes been missing in her sophomore campaign. She played with a kind of physicality and confidence that you'd expect from a former #1 overall pick and a reigning Rookie of the Year, bulldozing through smaller defenders, crashing the boards, and finishing with authority in the paint. Her performance was reminiscent of a polar bear in the post, finally embracing the dominance that her size and skill set afford her. Kelsey Mitchell also chipped in with 19 points on 8 of 17 shooting, continuing her hot streak over the past several games, though one could argue she should have been more involved defensively, especially with Clark out. She appeared to be iced out of the offensive flow at times, and in a game where Indiana needed every bucket, her relatively low shot volume was questionable. Despite the offensive execution from Indiana being generally strong, the game ultimately slipped away due to their porous defense, particularly on the interior, where they were repeatedly exposed by the Sparks' size and savvy execution. Azura Stevens and Kelsey Plum were brilliant for Los Angeles, with Stevens in particular dominating in the paint, a matchup nightmare for smaller Fever defenders like Mitchell, who simply lacked the size to contend in those situations. Over and over, Indiana's defensive rotations were a step late, their box-outs non-existent, and their help defense slow, allowing Los Angeles to get easy looks at the rim and capitalize on second-chance opportunities. One of the most glaring issues was rebounding. Time and again, the Fever failed to secure defensive boards, allowing the Sparks to extend possessions and drain their confidence. Even when the initial defense held, the inability to clean the glass doomed them. The Sparks made shots they had no business making, drilling contested jumpers and executing tough finishes like a team that didn't resemble their 10th place standing. Credit has to go to them. They played with urgency and capitalized on every Fever mistake. One of the few bright spots on the defensive end was rookie post player Temi Fagbenal, Michaela Timpson, whose limited minutes were marked by her shot-blocking presence and physicality. She swatted away shots with authority and altered others just with her positioning and size. Although she didn't stuff the stat sheet with blocks, her impact was tangible, and she arguably deserved more playing time, especially given how well the team played during her stretches on the court. She also provided some offense around the basket, converting dump-offs and drawing fouls, proving herself as a viable pick-and-roll partner, something that could become deadly once Clark returns and resumes orchestrating the offense. The potential two-woman game between Clark and Timpson offers intriguing upside. Throughout the game, the Fever continued to exploit a glaring weakness in the Sparks' interior defense. They consistently fed Boston down low, allowing her to use her touch and size advantage to score easily at the rim. It was a sound offensive strategy that Indiana executed well, and they deserve credit for sticking with it throughout the game. Even when shots didn't fall late, The approach of attacking the paint never wavered, which is exactly what a team with Boston should do when opponents fail to protect the rim. A strong offensive scheme was clearly in place, and the execution was solid from start to finish. What failed them was defense, plain and simple. Defensive rotations were sluggish, rim protection was unreliable, and their ability to string together stops was non-existent. For every big shot the Fever made, the Sparks answered immediately. That inability to gain separation or establish defensive momentum prevented Indiana from closing the gap or taking full control when they had opportunities. Perhaps most concerning is how familiar all of this feels. 4 months now, the same critiques have haunted this Fever team. They cannot protect the paint, they do not rebound well, and they collapse under pressure late in games. 2 strong defensive outings against the Lynx and Aces now appear to be exceptions rather than signs of real growth. This game, in many ways, was a regression to their old habits, a reversion to soft defense and poor late-game execution. Aaliyah Boston, for all her brilliance on offense, continues to struggle with positioning and reaction on defense. Her defensive presence isn't where it needs to be for someone of her stature, and if she wants to truly ascend to elite status, she'll have to develop more awareness and timing on the help side. The same goes for the rest of the team. Without consistent rim protection and rebounding, offensive bursts will not be enough to carry this team to wins, especially in close contests. The Fever's interior defense has been their Achilles heel all season, and unless it improves, this team's ceiling remains limited, even with the offensive firepower they possess. Their effort cannot be questioned. They played hard, stayed aggressive, and kept fighting, but WNBA games are not won on effort alone. Execution, particularly on the defensive end, is what separates good teams from struggling ones. Until Indiana finds a way to address their defensive lapses, improve their rebounding, and execute late-game stops, they will continue to find themselves on the wrong end of winnable games. With Caitlin Clark's return potentially on the horizon, there's hope that her presence will help stabilize their fourth-quarter offense and provide more structure in key moments. But she alone cannot fix a defense that leaks points at the rim and fails to finish possessions with rebounds. The Fever are a young team with a lot of promise and undeniable talent, but until they grow defensively and develop a collective toughness around the rim, they'll keep falling short, learning the hard way that scoring alone doesn't win games in the WNBA.
Like how was seeing Paige's unselflessness, both on and off the court, kind of inspired you as a basketball player as well?
Yeah, I think the way that
The Indiana Fever's ongoing struggle to finish games remained painfully visible in their recent loss to the Los Angeles Sparks, a matchup where once again their defensive deficiencies, poor rebounding habits, and a lack of consistent late-game execution erased what could have easily been a much-needed win. It's a pattern that's haunted the team since the 2023 season, and it continues to define them in 2025, starting games strong, building leads, showing offensive rhythm and confidence, and then falling apart under pressure in the closing minutes. They sorely missed Caitlin Clark in this game, not just for her scoring but for her orchestration, her timing, her ability to steady the offense and punish teams for lapses, especially late in games where her high IQ and leadership are indispensable. What the Fever did get, however, was another strong showing from Natasha Howard, who posted 21 points on 8 of 11 shooting and played a disciplined, efficient game built on reacting rather than forcing. It wasn't a highlight reel night, but it was the kind of mature performance teams need to anchor their energy. And then there was Aaliyah Boston, 23 points and 12 rebounds, continuing her resurgence as an interior powerhouse, showing aggression, physicality, and the willingness to dominate smaller defenders. She wasn't as efficient as usual, going 9-for-17, but her presence down low was clear, and her mindset was exactly what the team has needed all season. But even with strong outings from Howard and Boston, the glaring problems loomed: poor rotations, lack of size, and inadequate rebounding. The Fever allowed Azura Stevens and Kelsey Plum to take over, and Stevens in particular torched Indiana for the second time this season. Stevens' shot-making, especially from the perimeter as a big, was game-changing. Whether hitting tough step-backs over defenders or drilling threes off the dribble, she looked more like a dynamic forward with all-star pedigree than a center on a 6-win team. In fact, She looked like exactly the kind of piece the Fever need. A lengthy, defensive-minded center with shooting touch to pair with Boston. Boston herself seems more like a combo big. Her lack of elite rim protection and her offensive versatility suggests that playing alongside a rim protector like Stevens would unlock both players. The comparison to Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns isn't far off in theory. Bringing in a big like Stevens would allow Boston to play more freely and reduce the defensive burden she can't always carry alone. But Stevens belongs to a team that likely won't give her up easily, especially given how she's played against Indiana. She's too good to stay hidden on a bottom feeder roster. Still, if the Fever want to be serious playoff contenders in the next year or two, acquiring a player of Stevens' caliber should be on their radar. Offensively, Kelsey Mitchell continued her recent tear. She drilled difficult mid-range shots, nailed threes, and looked like the reliable offensive engine she's been for Indiana over the last several seasons. Her performance raises a critical question. Why isn't the coaching staff riding the hot hand? Time and again, when Mitchell or Clark are in rhythm, the play calling inexplicably shifts away from them. That's not how you win games in the modern WNBA. When Steph Curry is cooking, Golden State runs everything through him. When Luka Doncic is on fire, Dallas feeds him relentlessly. The same should apply to Indiana Stars. You let elite scorers take over. Instead, the Fever seem hesitant to let Mitchell or Clark string together multiple possessions of shot creation, which makes no sense in close games. It's coaching malpractice to go away from your best weapons in the moments that matter most. Meanwhile, the Fever's defensive lapses continued to pile up. They left shooters wide open, gave up uncontested layups, and failed to close defensive possessions with rebounds. Late in the fourth, they were up 5 points with momentum, only to surrender a wide-open lane and watch their lead shrink due to the exact same mistakes that have plagued them all season. Even when they played excellent defense, forcing tough shots with the clock winding down, Stevens would drill an improbable, demoralizing jumper as she did over Natasha Howard with seconds left on the shot clock. There's not much you can do about a shot like that. It's simply better offense. But what you can do is control the controllables. Box out, rotate, communicate, and finish plays. And the Fever failed to do that repeatedly. One of the biggest missed chances came when Kelsey Mitchell had an open lane for a layup that she missed. Yes, there was contact. Yes, it probably could have drawn a foul, especially since similar contact was called earlier in the game, but in that moment, with the score tight and the game slipping away, that's a layup a veteran guard has to finish. On the next play, Rakia Jackson got a wide-open layup for the Sparks, further exposing Indiana's weak paint defense. Lexi Hull was in position to take a charge, but didn't get the call. Moments later, Boston herself missed an open bunny, a shot she usually makes with ease. These moments snowballed. Every missed layup, every failed box out, every unforced foul handed the Sparks more life. And to their credit, the Sparks capitalized. In the final minute, A.R. McDonald had a decent look from three that rimmed out. Hull fought for the offensive rebound and appeared to be fouled, but the refs swallowed the whistle. Still, she rushed the putback, and the Fever came up empty. With time ticking down, they had one last chance, a final shot for Boston to tie the game, and it didn't fall. That's how the game ended. Not with a collapse so much as a death, by 1,000 cuts. The missed layups, the blown defensive assignments, the rebounds that slipped through their fingers, the inexplicable stretches where their best players weren't utilized. And over everything else, the absence of Clark, the playmaker who could have managed the clock, created shots, and stemmed the tide when things got shaky. The good news, claiming that this team suddenly became elite defensively, was ignoring the bigger picture.